August 2020 will complete my second year as a full-time business owner. I make a living by writing online, and specifically, I'm a healthcare copywriter and content marketing strategist. And my goal in this episode of the Lazy Millennial Lounge podcast is to teach you how to get paid by writing online as well. So here's a quick timeline of when I got started and how I got to where I am now. In 2017, I started a personal blog called Your Friendly Public Health Pharmacist. That same year, a health company, some kind of way, found out about my blog, liked my writing, and offered to pay me to write a blog post for their company. Later that same year, as a couple of more companies did the same thing, I realized that I could make some extra money by doing freelance writing on the side. So at the end of 2017, I started to take an online freelance writing course that helped me make my first $1,500 in 3 months, in my first 3 months of freelance writing. And I'll talk a lot more about that course a little bit later. So the following year, 2018, I created my first account on a freelance gig platform called Upwork. And I started freelancing for health-related gigs that were posted there. Started making enough money to realize that I didn't need the full-time job as a public health pharmacist or the master's in public health degree that I was pursuing at the time. And more about that story is in episode 58 of the podcast. It's about my experience as a graduate school dropout. And then in August 2018, I was able to quit my full-time job as a public health pharmacist and start freelancing, start doing freelance writing full-time. After quitting that job, I decided that I needed to transition from being a freelancer to an actual business owner. I needed to shift that mindset. So I turned my freelance writing into a bona fide business, and I booked a huge client, my biggest client at that point. I was hired to write the pharmacology section of a review book for medical students who were preparing to take their board exams. And then in 2019, I booked my next biggest client, which was an educational company who hired me to write an online course for students who were preparing to take the pharmacy technician certification exam. 2020, I am still working on that course, and I'm also here telling you, my Lazy Millennial listeners, how I was able to get to that point and how you can also get paid to write online. So this is going to be a bit of a lengthy episode, so I'll tell you exactly what topics I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm going to talk about first why you would even want to make money writing online. What are the benefits of making money by writing online? Secondly, I'm going to tell you how to make money writing online, the actual steps from 1 to 5, the steps that I followed to start my freelancing business and also my copywriting business. And then third, I'm going to talk about a resource that you can use to help you actually get started with your online writing. Specifically, I'll be talking about the course/challenge that I took that taught me how to start a freelance writing business. I'm going to be sharing the things that I literally did myself. So this is not one of those podcast episodes where you listen and kind of put it in the back of your mind. If you are serious about wanting to make money writing online, then you should really, really pay attention to this episode. Take notes, run it back if you have to. So first and foremost, why would you want to make money writing online? Let's get this out of the way. If you don't like writing, this is probably not the side hustle, the additional stream of income, the freelance situation for you. If you do like writing, even if there's only like a very specific type of writing you like to do, there is money that has your name on it and is waiting for you to come scoop it up. Writing online is great for 3 reasons, in my opinion. One, of course, it provides an extra stream of income, and if you are anything like me, that is something that definitely comes in handy. Secondly, it's a valuable skill for online businesses, which will only continue to grow. And a lot of online business owners either don't have the time, or they don't have the desire, or they don't have either, to write their own content or their own copy. So if you can step in and use your writing interest and your writing skills to fill that need, they would be happy to pay you to do it. The third reason I love online writing is because it's relevant to any and every industry or sector, which is great for people who thrive on variety like me, and I assume like you, since you are listening to a podcast all about multi-passionate millennials. Any type of industry or sector you can think of, there is writing that is relevant to that. So no matter where your interests lie, there are opportunities for you to be able to use your writing skills to earn you some extra cash and to continue to work in whatever field you happen to be interested in. All right, so that's number one. That's out of the way, why you want to make money writing online. All right, this is a lengthy episode. So let's start with this. Why would you want to make money writing online? All right, we're going to get this out of the way. If you don't like writing, this is probably not the side hustle or freelance situation for you. If you do like writing, even if there is only a very specific type of writing you like to do, there is money with your name on it that's waiting on you to come scoop it up. All right, so for me, in my opinion, writing online is great for 3 reasons. Number one, it provides an additional stream of income, which always comes in handy. Number 2, it's a valuable skill for online business owners. And what I mean by that is online businesses, which will only continue to grow, and their owners, they know that they need copy or content in order to succeed online, but they oftentimes either don't have the time, don't have the desire, don't have the skill, or don't have any of those things to be able to write their own content or their own copy. And so a lot of them would be happy to throw their money at you if it turned out that you could step in and fill that need for them. They would be happy to pay you to do it. And then the third thing is that online writing is relevant to any and every industry or sector you could possibly think of, which is great for people like me who thrive on variety. And I assume people like you who are listeners of the Lazy Millennial Lounge podcast for multi-passionate millennials, I'm assuming you have a lot of different interests too. And so writing is a great way to tap into those different interests, no matter what specific fields you are interested in. All right, so that's why you would want to make money writing online. Let's move to the next part of this episode. This is the meat of the episode, which is how to make money writing online. What are the actual steps? We're going to take this from 1 to 5, okay? Step 1, know how to write. If you want to make money writing online, you have to know how to write. Now, I am assuming that you can already do this because you don't necessarily need to be a great writer. You do need to be a good, competent writer. Now, I get asked a lot how I got into freelance writing, and really the answer is that I started writing back in college. I had a work-study job for a cancer education website called Cancer Quest, and my job was to keep the drug reference pages up to date. And so that involved a lot of research and a lot of writing. And that actually ended up being one of the several things that got me interested in going to pharmacy school. But even after I went on to pharmacy school, I continued to write in a variety of extracurricular settings. So it's something that's always been a part of my background, at least since college. And then that was always involved in whatever professional roles I had. But even if writing is not something you already have a lot of experience in, that doesn't mean that you can't learn. Remember, you don't have to be great at this. You just have to be good. And you can get good at anything these days, okay? There are 3 websites that I personally recommend for learning creative skills like writing. There's Masterclass, there's Creative Live, and if you are into copywriting, which is basically using words to write copy, we call it, that moves someone to a specific action, usually selling something. 3 websites Masterclass, Creative Live, and Copy Hackers. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see examples of the types of courses that are offered on these websites. For example, for the podcast listeners, Masterclass has one where Malcolm Gladwell, the author of Outliers and lots of other popular books, Blink, and he teaches writing. Judy Bloom teaches writing. On Creative Live, you have options like writing your story, effective email and newsletter marketing, how to create addictive content. Copy Hackers is very specific to copywriting. So there's Copy School and Master of Guest Blogging. Anyone who's listening to this, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast, you can get access to the slides that I'm showing here by clicking the link in the description box for the YouTube video or the description box for the podcast episode. So that way, these courses that I'm talking about, you can just click on the links and go straight to the websites rather than having to write all this down and try to remember it. Okay, so know how to write. And if you don't know yet, learn with the help of affordable courses on websites like Masterclass, Creative Live, Copy Hackers. Content Marketing Institute also has courses. And then once you learn, or once you start the process of learning, or if you already know how to write, you want to practice often. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, think about what type of writing you're best at and most interested in and is most enjoyable to you. You might hear this called niching down. A niche or niche, as some people call it, is just like a category. So it's a type of writing that you do. You can niche down based on the kind of writing you do or the type of audience you service through your writing. So I'll give you an example. I chose to niche based on type and audience. So the type of writing that I do is copywriting and content writing. The audience that I do it for is, or are, I don't know how you make that subject and verb agree, are healthcare providers and digital health companies. So I provide copywriting and content marketing services for healthcare providers and digital health companies. I chose this niche because as a pharmacist, my background is healthcare. That's what I know. I had connections within healthcare. I knew how to communicate with people in healthcare. I know a lot about the topics. And so when I'm writing, if I do need to research something, which is often, I know exactly where to go and exactly how to research it for accurate information. This was like healthcare was low-hanging fruit for me. And so that's why I chose that audience. I went with content writing, that type, because it was closely related to blogging, which I had done in the past and had found enjoyable. So examples of types of writing that you could do. There's journalism, there's copywriting and content writing like we've been talking about. There's script writing, there's research writing, there's medical writing, there's social media, there's resumes. In terms of audience, literally any audience you can think of: designers, entrepreneurs, transportation industry, engineers, education, healthcare providers. The thing about your audience is, if you're going to niche down, the idea is that it's as specific as possible. Okay, so one way my business coach puts it is, I should be able to hear what you offer and think of a very specific person who fits that category. So if I say to you, I do content marketing services for private practice healthcare providers, you might know a specific private practice healthcare provider who has a website and needs content marketing services. But if I say to you, I write for schools, well, schools is very broad. Are we talking early learning, K through 12, postgraduate? What kind of schools are we talking about here? And what kind of writing are we talking about here? So the idea is that if you can think of a specific person, I can easily refer you to a private practice healthcare provider who might need content marketing services. I can't necessarily easily refer you to a school who needs writing. It's just very broad. Okay. Now we're talking about niching down, but keep in mind that you don't actually have to. One of the very first episodes of the Lazy Millennial Lounge podcast that I published featured a woman named Mariana Abed McDougall, who is a writer that prides herself actually on not niching down. Her goal is to explore her multi-passionate nature through her writing. And so niching down would be the opposite of what she is aiming to do through that. You can go back and listen to episode 1 to hear how she manages to make that work for her. So let's cover a few pros and cons of niching down before we move on. I mentioned one of them, referrals. Referrals are easy. Think about the differences between these statements, okay? I write journal articles. I write long-form journal articles. I write long-form journal articles for magazines. I write long-form journal articles for Millennial Women Entrepreneurial magazines. Okay, you see how we went from very broad to very specific? That determines how easy it is for someone to refer you to potential work. And referrals are very important when it comes to making money writing online. You want to get as many referrals as possible. The next pro, over time, when you choose a very specific subject, obviously you're going to become an expert in that area because you're writing about it so much. That also boosts your referral capacity because people will come to know you as the person who writes about XYZ. Another benefit of becoming an expert is the money. You can charge higher ticket prices for your expertise. Okay. And then you save time because of the expertise you gain. Maybe you don't have to do as much research when you're about to write for a topic because you've been doing it for a while. Like it's pretty much all you do. So you know that subject like the back of your hand. If you do have to do research, it's probably much faster versus, going out here and picking a subject that you know very little about. All right, so what are the downsides? You can feel like you are pigeonholing yourself into one specific area, and that can kind of make it difficult for you to step outside of your niche and explore. Say you are a copywriter who's been a copywriter for 10 or 15 years, and all 10 or 15 of those years, you've been writing for interior design. If you ever decide that you want to step out of that, it's going to be much harder because you've spent so much time in one specific area. And then also just in the moment, there's a loss of variety because all of the projects that you're working on are going to be in one specific field. So these are just some pros and cons to consider. All right. What's step 3? Build a portfolio of samples. All right. Now that you know what you want to write, you know who you want to write it for, you need to have proof that you can actually write. Because nobody's going to give you money if they don't know that you can produce what you say you can. That is where your portfolio comes in. A portfolio is basically just a set of samples that you're going to use to demonstrate your writing ability to a prospective client. Your samples can consist of existing work, like work you've done before for previous clients, or if you don't have any work that you've done before, because some people are coming into freelance writing brand new, like you haven't written nothing. If you don't have any, you can make something up. So I don't mean like going online and finding something and copying and pasting and plagiarizing. I mean, pretend like somebody asked you to write a piece and then go write it and then put that in your portfolio. Now, don't lie and say, I wrote this piece for the Huffington Post. I wrote this piece for the Huffington Post when you really didn't. Like, you don't want to do that, but you can just kind of make up a prompt, basically, is what I'm trying to say, and put that in your portfolio. It's helpful to have 3 to 5 samples that you can use. Let me go back. All right, so it's helpful to have like 3 to 5 samples that are closely related to the type of gig you are looking for. So if I'm pitching to write website copy for a digital health client, I'm not going to send them a sample of a set of social media posts that I created for a fashion influencer. That is irrelevant to them in a multitude of ways. Instead, I'm going to provide samples that closely match the audience or the type of writing, or ideally both. So I could show them an About Me page on a website that I wrote for another health client. Now, when I first began freelancing, I took a creative approach to my portfolio that a lot of new freelance writers actually do. So remember that your friendly public health pharmacist blog that I mentioned earlier, that blog was my portfolio. When clients asked to see samples of my work, I referred them to that blog. Okay. Um, if the gigs were a little bit more scientific and buttoned up in nature, then I used samples from my previous jobs. Because remember, like I said, my previous professional roles were based in writing. So I had professional samples. I might have had to take a few things out here or there for confidentiality purposes, but I also reference those on occasion. Just think of your portfolio like your resume. You're going to tweak what's in it based on the gig you're trying to land. So this is a screenshot of like the first part of my portfolio that I use now. I have website copy. Further down in my portfolio, I have examples of email campaigns that I've written, and I have examples of blog posts that I've written. And I just enter this into Google Docs. Like, it's nothing fancy. If you can't see on the podcast, it's nothing fancy. It's in a Google Doc. It's well organized and bulleted, and so it's easily formatted, kind of like a resume, right? Like, you want white space, you want bullets, stuff like that. And then I have links that go out to the actual web pages that I did this work for. Okay, and then this is a screenshot from my blog, Your Friendly Public Health Pharmacist, where you can see examples of the posts that I had written there. And that is kind of what prospective clients would see when I sent them that information. So, all right, you've got your portfolio. Step 4 is to find the money. Find opportunities that are paying. So once you've learned how to write and you've decided on what you want to write and for whom, and you have your samples, the natural next stop is to find the money. If you want to write for popular blogs like The Penny Hoarder, XO Nicole, Freelance Mom, what you need to do is go to their websites and look up their contributor or their guest blogging policies. On those pages, they will detail what is required of you to write for their website. They will also state whether or not they offer money for posts. Many of them do accept guest bloggers, and they will pay you for your content. Others will not. It's just a matter of really using Google to find the website and look for the information. Now, keep in mind that some blogs do take contributing writers, like I mentioned, but they don't pay. So that's really up to you to decide whether you want to pitch the blog and write something for them purely for the exposure, purely for the byline, or whether you want to stick to paid opportunities. There are also online magazines that pay for contributions, okay? And you would find that in a similar way. Now, if you would rather write for businesses, there are a few approaches that you can take to find those opportunities. There are, first and foremost, gig boards, which are basically like job boards. If you think of Indeed, Monster, they're very similar, except they're for freelance opportunities. So some of the examples are Flex Jobs, Freelance Writing Gigs, and People Per Hour. And again, this is going to be a slide in the presentation that has a lot of links to these websites. So you can download this presentation in the description box for the YouTube video or in the description box for the podcast. All right. You can also use platforms like Upwork, FreeUp, and Fiverr. And you can also just go I was going to say old fashioned, but it's not really old fashioned. I guess the approach, which is cold outreach, is more of an old fashioned approach, but you can use LinkedIn for that type of cold outreach. And then, like anything in life, people that you know in your personal network are a really great resource. Ask people in your network, local businesses, your child's school or daycare, your job, your friends, your family, about opportunities they might have or they might know about. Also, you can ask other freelancers, other professional writers who might have overflow work, if you can take some of that work off of their plates for a fee. The thing with finding paid gigs is they are usually not just going to fall into your lap. You really have to go out there and you have to find them. And then once you find them, you have to pitch them. Number 5, pitch and close. All right, you did not come this far to chicken out. Nobody can accept your services. Nobody can pay you for your services if you don't offer them your services, if you don't pitch yourself. Now, to be honest, pitching, selling, this is really a whole different conversation. There is an art to that, and it's covered extensively in one of the resources that I'm going to tell you about in just a second. But on the Lazy Millennial Lounge podcast, we're also going to be having an episode entirely dedicated to sales. In the Business Basics series of the podcast is going to be popping off very soon in the second quarter of this year, 2020. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do it right now because you are not going to want to miss that episode on sales. Now, before we move on to the resource that helped me launch my freelance writing business, you might be wondering how long it realistically takes you to see results from this process. And the truth is, okay, you have a real talk moment. The truth is that is completely dependent upon you. How long it takes to see results is completely dependent upon how much time you are willing to dedicate to honing your writing ability, looking for opportunities, and putting yourself out there. It's very easy to say that you want to make some extra money on the side by writing. It's really easy to say that you want to be a freelance writer, but there are really so many mental blocks and barriers that can pop up and hinder you. And if you let those things block you from your goal, and if you start making excuses and finding reasons not to do this and not to do that, it's going to show. If you try to skip steps, it's going to show, and you probably will not see success. If you do, it probably won't be in a reasonable time period. If you decide to really do this, though, and to really be consistent with it, despite whatever fears you have or whatever other mindset blocks you are facing, you will likely see success and much sooner. Now, with the challenge I'm about to tell you about, I made $1,500 in my first 3 months freelance writing. That was on top of my full-time jobs. That was some nice extra cash on the side. So if you start doing the work immediately, you can start seeing financial results soon. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to quit your job in 3 months or 6 months or even a year. I was able to do that, so I know it's possible, but that's not a guarantee. Like, that's not a universal thing. It's going to take a healthy dose of discipline and persistence and maybe a tiny dash of luck if we're being completely honest. But you are completely in control of those first two things, the discipline and the persistence. That's in your control, okay? The luck, not so much, but the discipline and persistence that's in your court, okay? So the third part of this episode, Act 3, the resource that you can use to start your online writing side hustle. If this is not your first time listening to the show, you probably know that I am a huge proponent of investing in yourself and investing in your interests. And that includes writing, if that's something that you are interested in. I did not figure out how to do this on my own. I have taken at least 2 courses that I attribute my success to, and I'm going to tell you about one of them specifically today. This is the one that I took when I was just starting out. And I'm going to talk about this one because I feel like it's most appropriate for people who have just started or are at the step right before starting. Like, you're trying to figure out what this online writing thing is, if you can do it, how you can do it. This is the course for that. And it's an online course that's called Write Your Way to Your First 1K. It's by Elna Kane. Elna is a freelance writer. She's a blogger. She's a stay-at-home mom of twins, and which exhausts me just saying that. But after about 6 months of freelance writing part-time, Elna was able to replace the salary that she made from her full-time job. So she quit that job, decided to stay at home with her kids, but she still wanted to continue to bring in some type of income, and she was able to do that because of her freelance writing. And once she kind of figured all of that out, she decided to create this course called Write to 1K for short, so that people could learn how to do what she did, basically, to transform their lives as well. Right to 1K is, in my opinion, a great resource if you want to learn how to get paid to write. If you want to turn your freelance writing into a real business to, feel official. And if you want to learn how to find and pitch legitimate clients, AKA real clients with real money. Okay. But I would not recommend this course if you are expecting writing online to be a get rich quick situation for you. Okay? Write to 1K is not it. I repeat, Write to 1K nor any other writing course is going to be a get rich quick scheme. It takes time to build your expertise and to build your reputation and to exercise your sales chops. Okay, but Write to 1K does help you set the foundation that you need, and it contains 7 modules. The first is laying the foundation. That's the one where Elna teaches you how to find your niche and how to create writing related goals. The second step is building your writer platform. That's basically your website. She walks you through how to build your writer website and how to use that to create an online brand for yourself. The next stop is your portfolio that we talked about in great detail. That's pretty self-explanatory, but in this module, she teaches you how to format your blog posts because there is a very specific way you want to do that. How to draft your author bio, things like that. How to build that portfolio that is going to represent you well when you are pitching clients. Speaking of clients, the next module is about finding them, how to find them on job boards, social media, through cold pitching, etc. Speaking of pitching, the next step is about pitching, how to set your rate, how much money you want, and what to say when you are pitching to get yourself that money that you have asked for. And then next is your first 1K, how to write high-paying content, how to edit, how to find images, things like that. And then lastly, your freelance business. So invoicing, drafting agreements, client communications, sort of the technical back end of the freelance writing business. Okay. So this course is ideally best for people who are going to be offering content marketing or blogging services. But honestly, even if you're not, even if there are other types of writing that you're interested in, most of the course would still be applicable to you. So I pretty much covered the highlights of this course. These are the things that stood out to me when I took it, which was back in 2017 or 18. I would have to look back at my notes. Whatever date I told you at the beginning of this episode, that's when I took it. And so I think I covered the highlights, but I did also write a more in-depth blog post specifically about this course that you can also find in the description box for this episode, along with this slide presentation that I'm using, okay? Lazy millennial friends, you might not want to write for a living like I do, but writing online is a really great way to make some extra cash on the side, and you might want to do that. So I hope this episode helped you figure out whether this is something you might want to try to do for yourself. If you have a friend who is a bomb writer, share this episode with them. Help them get their freelance business off the ground as well. Promise they'll love you for it. And the last thing before you go, if you learned something new from this episode, something valuable, something meaningful, please take a screenshot of the episode, post it to IG, and tag me. I'm at Lazy Millennial Podcast. LAZI Millennial has 2 L's, 2 N's, Lazy Millennial Podcast. And that would be really helpful because when you let me know the types of things that you like, I can make sure that I create more of it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.